Introducing Ryan's Tools 2.0, the most advanced Ryan's Tools ever, until the next version. Ryan's Tools 2.0. You know, I was thinking of making this version less advanced than the last version just to, mess with people. But, I figured why not throw in some new stuff, So I got a lot of really great new things in Ryan's Tools 2.0. For one, I did a lot of work underneath the hood, fixing more bugs, making things work even more smoothly. Okay, so the first new thing I've added is Easy UV. Now it's just like the Morph UV button, except it improves a few things. So the Morph UV button by default works fine in most situations, but if you're looking at the model from, say, a side view, or if the model is off away from the center of the world, in those situations the Morph UV button doesn't really show you things in the most useful way. So Easy UV fixes those problems, along with a couple other things that helps it move more smoothly. So I just use Easy UV now instead of Morph UV. The second thing is Easy Spotlight. Just simply click it and load up an image. It brings it right into Spotlight. Also, it just simply removes a few roadblocks, a few things that are tricky about getting images into Spotlight sometimes. It just makes everything easier. Okay, now let's look at some really useful Gizmo tools. So there is now in ZBrush a way to center the gizmo, but I've gone one step further. I've got these nifty little buttons that put the gizmo at left, right, and center, front, back, and center, or top, bottom, and center. Alright, so where this comes in really handy, let's say you want to position an object on a surface, right? And once you've got it positioned, you want to resize it. And let's say we want to make the bowl bigger. Well, what you would typically do is, let's see, let's make it bigger, and now it's going through the floor, so we got to move it up. Or what you might do instead is manually move the gizmo down and then scale it up. Okay, either of those ways, they work, but they're like a lot of manual effort. So what I've done is I've made these buttons, so now we just click Y bottom, and it moves the gizmo on the Y-axis to the bottom. So now we can just scale this up, no problem. Now this comes in really handy because you can mix and match these different ones. So we want it to be on the bottom, but maybe we also want it to be on the back. And now the position has updated, so now it's at the back of the bounding box on the bottom. And we could even put it on the left corner if we wanted to. Okay, so now let's say we move the gizmo around a little bit, we do some other things, and we want it to go back to this left bottom back position. Just click on Place Gizmo and it'll go back to whatever options you have selected here. And of course, if you want it to go right back to the center, just click on Center for all of these. Alright, here's another little feature. It's just pretty simply a way to make dynamic subdivision work the way it does in other 3D software. So for example, if we toggle dynamic subdivision on and off, you can see on this character's shirt, when it goes into dynamic subdivision, the open edges shrink a little bit. And this is not the way it works in Maya, for example. So if we want it to work the way it does in Maya, we have to click on this Crease Open Edges button. So let's see what happens when we do that. Okay, so now you can see that when the dynamic subdivision happens, it's not shrinking that in. Okay, while we're talking about dynamic subdivision, let's look at Apply Dynamic Subdiv Only and Apply Dynamic Thickness Only. So let's look at this shirt again, and now I've got some thickness added to it, and the thickness and the smoothing are both being run through that dynamic subdivision. You can see we've got thickness here, and we've got some smooth subdivisions. So typically in ZBrush, what you might do if you want to lock this in is click Apply. However, if you want to apply only the thickness, but keep the subdivisions dynamic, you could click on Apply Dynamic Thickness Only. Or alternatively, if you want to apply the subdivision only, but keep the thickness as dynamic, you can click on Apply Dynamic Subdiv Only. Okay, so now we've got subdivisions here in the surface. And if we turn dynamic back on, it's just going to turn the thickness back on dynamic without subdividing it more. Now let's just go ahead and undo through that. Alright, back to where everything is dynamic. Now clicking Apply Dynamic Thickness Only. So now it added the thickness, that locked that in. If we turn dynamic back on, now the thickness is not being added, but the subdivisions are. So this comes in really handy for me all the time. Okay, I'm so excited for this next one, Easy Turntable. So if you want to make a turntable in ZBrush, you can do it, but there's a lot of settings that you have to go through here in the movie palette, and there's like all these different like fade ins and fade outs and overlay images and title images. And after you create your turntable, ZBrush overlays all these like fade ins, and they slap their logo on it, and the timing is not very convenient, and everything is wrong about it. It's like does not create a file that you would want to show to anybody. So I just simply made the Easy Turntable button, and what happens when you click it is you just are able to give it a name, hit enter, and it generates the turntable. It automatically sets all of the settings in a way that just makes sense. So you just simply get out a turntable that looks good. It runs for a good amount of frames. It gets rid of all the weird fade-ins and fade-outs, and gets rid of the ZBrush logo slapped on top of it, and it exports it to the ZMovies folder in your ZBrush program files. So this will just finish here in a moment, and I'll show you that. Alright, so after it has recorded all the frames, it's now exporting them. And it plays a nice little chime to let you know it's done. Okay, and here's your movie stored here in the ZMovies folder. And this really works well with the anti-aliasing turned on. And as you might notice, the anti-aliasing now is a toggle switch, so you can tell when it's on and when it's off. So when it exports with anti-aliasing on, it exports at the full resolution that you see on the screen. If anti-aliasing is off, it saves at half resolution. Okay, so up next is a fun little change to how I made Grow Mask work. So in the previous version, there was just a simple Grow Mask button, and it would expand the size of your mask by one polygon in every direction. Now, what I've done this time is I've gotten rid of that, and now I've got these grow and shrink mask by a single iteration, or you could go full auto mode. So let's see what that looks like. Alright, so let's say you come in here, hold down Control, click and drag with the gizmo, and you get a mask like that, right? And you want to mask something on the arm. So if you click on grow the mask once, it'll just grow it once. Just moving up one poly loop at a time. And then if you do shrink the mask, it does the same thing, but shrinks it one poly loop at a time. Now if you click on grow the mask live, what this does is it just goes for it. And then when you want to stop it, just hit escape and it stops there, and then you can just end up with the mask wherever it was. Same thing, full auto in reverse. So that's useful instead of having to hit that button over and over again if you want to grow the mask. So let's get it kind of nicely right in the middle of the arm there, and then we could just do something like blur the mask or something if you wanted to like twist the arm or something. Okay, so now let's use this same function. I'm going to shrink this back to the elbow, and let's look at another really cool feature, hitting escape right there. I'm really excited about this one. So when you want to move something like an elbow, the gizmo is generically placed kind of on the surface right where you clicked. If you control click and drag to make that mask, it's like on the surface. It's not inside the joint where you'd want that to be. So let's fix that by using the new tool, Gizmo Joint. So when you click that, what it does is it just moves the gizmo right to the middle of the joint, or basically moves it right to the middle of the border of the mask. So now we can just blur this mask a little bit. I'm just using a hotkey I have set up to the blur mask function. And now you can see we get a nice natural bend on that elbow. Well, natural-ish. I mean, ZBrush is only going to do so much, right? But natural-ish, and then you can go clean it up afterwards. But this is a whole lot easier than having to manually move the gizmo from multiple different angles to try to get it in there. Just one click and you're done. There's another change. I did have something called delete small, which would delete all small subtools. Like a lot of times you'll end up with like little tiny shards when you do a Boolean function, and that was useful for deleting those. But now what I've done is made a change. It's now trash small, and it's in the trash bin section. And what this does is it simply deletes all subtools that are the same size or smaller than the currently selected subtool, and it puts them together in the trash bin so you can actually undelete those if you accidentally deleted something you didn't want to. The previous version didn't allow that. Okay, you guys, I'm very excited about this next feature, Symmetry and Instance. Now, in previous versions of Ryan's tools, I had a different version of flip and weld buttons for each of the axes, X, Y, and Z. But now what I've done is I've set X, Y, and Z to these different toggles, X by default because that's the one you're going to use 99% of the time. And now I've also added Instance. So check out what happens. Just click that, and now this shoe has been flipped over into an instance. Any changes you make to one happen live to the other. You can even turn symmetry on for this shoe. And check that out, happens symmetrically to the other one as well. Now, when you're happy with all of the changes you've made to it, so now with Instance, if you want to toggle that off again, just click the button again and it disappears. You want to bring it back, click Instance again. Okay, and when you're done with it as an instance and you want to turn it into regular geometry, just simply click Lock In. The great thing about all of these is that they preserve your subdivision levels. You're not going to get that same deal from the built-in tools in ZBrush, I'll tell you that. It's a much more elegant solution for a civilized age. Not as random or clumsy as the built-in way of doing it. Okay, there is one thing to watch out for. I'm just going to undo this so that we're back to a single shoe again. Now, if you want to flip this, it's pretty straightforward, but you might want to pay attention to this button right here, Local Symmetry. So when Local Symmetry is on, this flip happens across the object or the subtool's local midpoint. So if we want to turn this off, that's going to flip this across the world axis. And so you get a result that might be a little bit more like what you want, especially if you're using weld. You're going to get that kind of result. If local symmetry is turned on and we do weld, it's going to do one of these things, which, you know, can be cool, but it might not be exactly what you want, but sometimes it is. So just pay attention to that LSIM toggle when using flip and weld. Now, instance is always going to instance across the world axis. Alright, so that's all the new features in Ryan's Tools 2.0. I want to send a big thank you out there to everyone who has purchased Ryan's Tools in the past. Ryan's Tools 2.0 is a free upgrade to anyone who has purchased Ryan's Tools Pro, that's $20 version of Ryan's Tools, in the past. You get a free upgrade to Ryan's Tools 2.0. However, if you haven't bought the Pro version in the past, Ryan's Tools 2.0 is a cost of $5 for the standard version, still $20 for the Pro version. Now you can still get any of the 1.x versions of Ryan's Tools for free. Think of it as like a try before you buy. And if you like what you see, go ahead and purchase Ryan's Tools 2.0 for $5 standard or $20 professional. Details are on the Gumroad page, link in the description. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. It's been really amazing to make these tools and be able to share them with the community out there.